How many of you have seen the movie from the mid-2000s, Super Size Me? Okay, it's probably one of the grossest movies you'd ever want to see. In this movie, the filmmaker Morgan Spurlock investigates the health hazards wreaked by our fast food nation. And what he did was he ate nothing but McDonald's food for 30 days. And what happened in those 30 days was that his ordinarily fit body went through these ugly changes. He got fat, his cholesterol rocketed, his organs took a beating. He was under medical supervision, so they were testing this along the way. And he became subject to headaches, mood swings, and even some symptoms of addiction. Now, I'm not against fast food because I know many of you here frequent McDonald's and Burger King, Taco Bell, and Dunkin' Donuts, and we could go down the list. The issue is, if that's the only thing we eat, if that's how we fill our lives, there are implications to that. There are places within us that are craving to be fed. And too many times we fill up those places with something fast. We hunger for meaning and purpose. We hunger for fulfillment. And then we run after all kinds of things in life. And we spend our time on things that we think are going to make us happy and they don't. Or we continue to fill our lives with the latest, shiniest object and it doesn't fill that deep craving within us. And then there's the whole society in which we live that we want to call not just the fast food nation, but what about the Costco nation? You know, many of us shop for meaning and purpose in life like we shop for stuff at Costco. Like those of us who have a Costco or Sam's Club or BJ, membership, we have been convinced that life is better because we can stock up on all of life's necessities at bargain prices. We think our lives will be better because we can buy more, and we're so happy about how much money we can save. But I don't know about you, but it creates a lot of stress for me when I've run out of room to store all the toilet paper and the paper towels. Most weeks there's only one of us living in our house. I don't need 24 rolls of toilet paper. I don't need 30 paper towel holders. But even more challenging for me is that I still buy food at Costco as if there are 4 people living in the house. And I end up with enough food to feed 10 people, and halfway through eating that food, I have to throw some of it out because it goes to waste, unless I can bring it to church and feed it to the youth group. But why do I keep doing this? There's that saying that if you keep doing things the same way, you get the same result. I've been saying this myself for years, and yet I just bought a big thing of tomatoes the other day and one of those 6 packs of peppers. When am I going to eat 6 peppers? But they looked good. And somehow I have been trained in my brain to think that somehow more is better, especially if it's cheaper. How do we fill our lives? If we spend our time with video games or internet content or TV content that fills us with anxiety and hatred and meanness, does that not do something to our bodies, to our minds, to our psyches? One of the marks of Richard Leslie's ministry is his encouragement for all of us to consider how we are feeding ourselves. Now, Richard enjoys his food and beverages, as we know, but he has been a great advocate and encourager for us to fill our lives with that which will last, to take the time to fill ourselves with that which brings joy and satisfaction, to take the time to slow down and practice prayer and teaching and conversation and find ways to connect ourselves with the life-giving force of our God. Thank you, Richard, for that reminder to all of us. A few weeks ago, we read the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Do you remember that story where Jesus is teaching on a hillside? People have flocked from all over to fill their minds and their hearts and their spirits with the teachings of Jesus. Jesus looks at them. He knows they are hungry. He knows they are hungry for hope and peace and meaning. Jesus knows that they're hungry for that which matters. Jesus knows that they're hungry to be loved. And you remember that in that story, after Jesus has been teaching for a while, he's concerned that maybe their stomachs are a little hungry too, and he asks the disciples to get them something to eat. And the disciples have this very narrow vision of what's going on, and they argue with Jesus and say, we don't have enough food, we don't have enough money to feed all of these people. And Jesus tells the disciples to make the people sit down. It's a great little piece of that story that we sometimes pass over. Jesus is not a buffet where we run up to the buffet, grab what we want from Jesus, and eat it fast and move on. Jesus asked the people to sit down, to slow down. We have no idea how long it took for Jesus to pass and the disciples to pass out the food to the thousands that were on the hillside. We know that Jesus miraculously changed a few loaves of bread and some fish into a simple meal that fed them all. But imagine, he told them to sit down. Was that not a signal not only to wait, but also to ponder what had been said, what had been taught? And maybe even Jesus wanted them to look at each other, to see who was sitting on the grass around them, to take the time for fellowship, not just to say, hey, Jesus, I like what you just said, I'm going to take that home with me, but to allow it to sink deep within. You see, Jesus came to bring us that which lasts. This is not fast food Jesus. This is the living bread, not just the communion that we receive, but to remind us that Jesus brings us words of hope, words of peace, stories that tell us how to be in community with each other, words that help us to remember what it means to be in fellowship. Jesus brings the bread that will last. You and I don't have to tell you this. You and I know we can fill ourselves with fast food, and it satisfies for a moment, and it even tastes pretty good because we know that the fast food makers have learned how much salt and how much sugar to put into food so that we crave it even more. It satisfies our hunger for a little while. We can fill our lives with shiny things and bigger this and the bigger that, and for a moment it may make us feel better, but it's just for a moment. But Jesus reminds us today that in order to live, we have to feed our lives with that which will last. Fill our lives with Jesus' words. Fill our lives with the bread of his life. Fill our lives with prayer and service to others. Fill our lives with words of hope and affirmation. Fill our lives with singing. Fill our lives with fellowship around the tables. What are you hungry for? And how will you feed yourself? Amen.